I am the president of the California Federation of Teachers, a union of educators and classified professionals. You will hear from Tony Thurman, the state superintendent of public instruction, Shireen Walter from the California PTA, Andrew Hoffman from the Community College League of California, as well as she is a board member of the LA Community College. So all of us want to thank them for joining us today. And today we are talking about schools and communities first. As you may all know, is now Prop 15, and we're excited that this is on the ballot, that this has a number, and we can celebrate Prop 13. So thank you for joining us today about this. Even before this recent crisis, our schools were struggling, and we knew that. We live in a state that's the 5th largest economy in the world, yet we are the 44th in per pupil spending in our K-12 system, as well as that Prop 98 covers our community college system by these conditions. But it's especially tough for our high needs and most vulnerable students. The state budget was just passed and signed, and it was passed with flat funding. But that's simply not enough resources. As I stated, we are 44th in the country in per pupil spending. And that's not enough resources to support our schools in both the short and long term. We're ready to do it. We're ready to pass Prop 15, but we just can't do it without additional resources to support our students and our schools. Now, schools up and down the state are faced with the dire threats of cuts and layoffs, and we're looking at that. And there are layoffs that are potential in our schools, in our classified ranks that help service and serve the students in our schools and our colleges. And it's become abundantly clear that we absolutely have to pass schools and communities first in November. On November 3rd, Prop 15 must be passed. This initiative, which would close corporate property tax loopholes to reclaim up to $12 billion every year for our schools and local governments, is exactly the measure we need to invest in schools and support those students who are most in need, all while protecting homeowners and renters, small businesses, and agriculture. It's especially troubling at our schools and in local communities face such unprecedented hardships. Many top corporations have actually been profiting, especially during this period of time. This initiative would close corporate property tax loopholes, which drain resources from our local communities, and a recent analysis showed that 92% of the revenue would come from only 10% of the wealthiest commercial property owners in the state. Californians know this, and they know that action is needed, and they're ready to close these corporate tax loopholes in order to fund our schools and our local communities. For those reporters who are joining us, we'll be, again, doing a discussion and Q&A after all of our speakers. You can ask your question in the chat box as well, in this Zoom chat box. So please submit those questions through that function. But first, I want to introduce a champion of education in the state of California. I want to introduce and open up the microphone to our state superintendent of public instructions, Tony Thurman. Thank you for joining us today, Tony.
Thank you, Jeff. It's an honor to join you and Shireen and Audra. Thank you to everyone and to add my voice to the effort to get Prop 15 passed. I want to encourage our voters to vote yes on Prop 15. I think Jeff outlined a lot of the reasons for why this is so important. You know, I'm grateful that our governor and our legislature have figured out a way to bring forward a budget that doesn't envision any immediate cuts for schools. But the reality is that our financial situation is so challenging that this is a budget that, you know, really envisions hardship over the next couple of years for our schools. And this is not the time for us to have any layoffs in schools, not classified workers, not anyone. You know, as we try to think about coming back to school, we know that we need to have all of our staff who are educators who support our students to help us do this safely. And our classified staff they're so important. I mean, during the pandemic, I mean, they've been handing out meals and sanitizing our campuses. And so these things are going to be critically important. And it's so important why we need Prop 15. Yes, we need more funding from the federal government. That is true. But in order to really address all of what we've experienced, we know that we're going to need additional resources that Prop 15 can provide. The reality is that our students have been deeply impacted by the pandemic. As you know, for our schools to reopen, they're going to need all kinds of personal protective equipment. The state is providing some, but it's a partial amount. We're going to need to have more counseling available for our students who have experienced depression as part of the pandemic, as well as our students who've been traumatized by watching some of the devastating acts of racism, police brutality, in the culture. And so our schools are going to need stable funding to support programs like restorative justice and counseling, and to support our core programs, teachers and classified staff who support our 6.2 billion students. So we need to have all of your support as we go forward. This is a measure that is so carefully crafted. It really considers it exempts homeowners and seniors and small business owners and people who work in agriculture. And so really, it's so carefully crafted to generate revenue in a way that protects some of our core businesses and protects our citizens. And as Jeff pointed out, really just a small percentage of very, very wealthy, billionaire types who, own property, really just asking them to pay their fair share. And so this is a great opportunity. I'm proud to put my name behind it. I'm proud to count. We're the fifth wealthiest economy in the world. Let's show them that by what we put in our budget. And Prop 15 is a great way for us to get to what we need to be able to support all of our students in the state of California. Thank you to the California Federation of Teachers and to PTA and to our educators and our leaders. Honored to work with you. Let's go get Prop 15 passed for all Californians.
And the usual blunder of speaking while you're on mute. Thank you, Tony. My bad. Thank you for joining us, and thank you for supporting Prop 15. This is work that we are doing together. And as you pointed out, you represent the K-12 system in the state of California. Now we're going to talk to Andrew Hoffman, who is the president of the Board of Trustees at the LA Community College District. And this does affect community colleges and supports our community colleges. So Andrew Hoffman, thank you for joining and supporting Prop 15.
Thank you, Jeff, and it's really indeed an honor to be here and alongside our superintendent. So thank you so much for your comments. I'm Andrew Hoffman, president of the Board of Trustees for the Los Angeles Community College District. The Los Angeles Community College District is the largest community college district in the country, and we play a vital role in educating Angelenos from all backgrounds. Nationwide, 1 in 4 community college students is a California community college student. So let that sink in for a moment. 25% of all community college students in the United States are right here in California. And community colleges represent a vital pathway to success, especially for historically underserved students. Here in Los Angeles County, 70% of our students come from disproportionately challenged communities of color, low-income students, immigrants, and others. And community colleges play a vital role in our economy. For instance, community colleges educate the majority of nurses and firefighters and other first responders in California, all of our essential workers, all of these essential workers who have been on the front lines of this crisis. In fact, California community colleges are the largest provider of workforce training in the nation. And community colleges are among our best public investments. Studies show that California taxpayers receive $4.50 in benefit for every $1 invested in a community college student. But most importantly, California community colleges are a vital pathway to success for our students. For instance, students earning a degree or a certificate from a California community college nearly double their earnings within 3 years. Also, attending or graduating from a California community college nearly doubles your chances of finding a job compared to those who did not complete high school. And community colleges play a vital role in educating those who have become unemployed or need retraining. This is especially important with the massive increase in unemployed Californians due to this pandemic. Partly because of this, we're expecting to see huge increases in enrollment as California continues to weather and eventually recover from this crisis. We're going to see increases in enrollment beyond just the graduating high school students who will also be attending. California community colleges already had a great need for resources, even before this crisis. Now that need is even more critical. The LACCD Board of Trustees, where I've been serving for the past 5 years, passed a resolution endorsing this initiative even before this crisis because we knew it was important then. And the statewide Community College League of California, where I also serve as a board member, just last week unanimously endorsed this measure because of how vital the need has become. If there were a great need before all of this, you can only imagine what the need looks like now. We're expecting to have to expend significant resources to implement more remote learning technology, PPE, increased cleaning, and so much more. In short, schools and communities first will be absolutely critical for the long-term challenges that community colleges face. Estimates show that this initiative would generate roughly $460 million every year, specifically for community colleges. These additional resources represent the ability for community colleges to, among other things, create additional space for additional students at a time when we expect enrollments to be significantly higher. It is simply unacceptable that corporate property tax loopholes exist in the face of such unprecedented threats to the vital services we all rely on, especially when research has shown that 92% of the revenue would come from only 10% of commercial property owners in the state. We know community colleges serve our neediest students. We know community colleges have tremendous economic benefits to those students and to our larger community. We know community colleges will be expected to serve even more students, and we know that educating those students will be even more expensive as a result of this crisis. Therefore, we absolutely need this common sense solution that will provide the resources our students so desperately need and deserve. Thank you.
Andra. Thank you for being a leader in our community college system, both in LA at the Community College District, as well as the League of Community Colleges. So thank you for being such a leader. And thank you for endorsing Prop 15 in schools, which is Schools and Communities First. So exciting to have a number. We've talked about K-12, we talked about community college. Now from the perspective of the parents and the students and communities at large, I'm introducing Shireen Walter, the California State PTA. Please, Shireen, thank you, and thank you for joining us and supporting Prop 15.
Thank you, Jeff. I'm so excited to be here today. It's always exciting to engage with superintendent of public instruction, so I'm thrilled. California State PTA supports Schools and Local Communities Funding Act because it aligns with our organization's goals of promoting the education, health, safety, and well-being of children and securing stable and sustainable public education funding. California's schools, as you mentioned, were underfunded before the pandemic, despite the fact that we're ranked as the fifth largest economy in the world. California ranks near the bottom in per pupil funding, student-teacher ratios, and in the number of school nurses, librarians, and counselors per student. Our schools lack the resources to provide a 21st century education for our children that includes PE, the arts, science, and technology. Schools and Communities First was important before this pandemic, but it's even more important now. Schools and educators have expended significant resources already on PPE, technology for remote learning, cleaning, and more. And these costs are only going to ramp up when schools reopen. Roughly 40% of the projected revenue raised from this initiative will go to education, with the rest allocated to cities and counties. This will provide much needed resources to our schools and communities. Funds from this initiative go to local communities to support essential workers and services such as public hospitals, first responders, youth programs, mental health services, and so much more. And we all know what a large impact this pandemic has had on the mental health of our students. So this is exceptionally important. PTA commends our legislature and governor for continuing to invest in children and families, recognizing that schools cannot reopen safely in the fall without adequate resources. Our state leaders managed to craft a budget that avoided severe cuts to education. But as Jeff mentioned, the funding remains the same as last year, and our costs are increasing. So there's no question that schools need more funding. The Schools and Communities First initiative represents the opportunity for voters to help establish a stable, sustainable funding source for schools and critical local services. And we hope that people will vote for it. Most importantly, Schools and Communities First raises these funds while including valuable protections for homeowners, renters, small businesses, and agriculture. So again, PTA strongly supports what now I got to get used to calling Prop 15, Schools and Communities First, and we think it's super important for K-12 education, community college, and for our local communities. So thank you, Jeff, for having me.
Thank you, everybody. I think, wait, yeah, I'm live. Thank you. Thank you. It's instead of walking up to the podium and back, knowing that you're in front of the mic, this is a little different. So thank you, Shireen. Thank you for that. Thank you for that perspective. As I said, we will take some questions now. If anybody on the phone has any questions, all of us are available to answer. I'm going to throw some out. And again, want to thank everybody for joining us. But this one is particularly to Tony. Could you talk more about what we expect with the state budget and why additional investments will be needed for schools going forward?
Sure, Jeff. I mean, obviously, everyone knows that the U.S. economy has been devastated by the impacts of COVID-19, and that means that California's economy is the same. California has moved from having a surplus to really being in a place where our budget really is in shambles because our revenue for schools really does come from other sources like income tax and sales tax. California just has not had the revenue to provide the kind of budget stability that we need. And as you all have pointed out, our budgets are flat at a time when they already were not enough to, really provide the broad promise of resources for all students, particularly students from foster care, students who are on the free and reduced lunch program, students of color, English learners. We've tried to accelerate giving more to support these students in supplemental ways, but the economy, because of the impacts of COVID-19, really threatened our ability to continue to do that. The fiscal outlook in terms of revenue is poor. And so we know that now more than ever, we need a measure like Schools and Communities First. We need Prop 15 to support our schools, to support our local municipalities, all of whom are struggling to come to grips with the impacts of COVID-19. Now is a critical time. And this measure, provides so much support, and its impacts are really, really small because it protects seniors and homeowners and renters, small businesses, and agricultural communities. So please, everyone, please support Prop 15.
Thank you, Tony. Yeah, I'm not on mute. Thank you. Thank you again. Thank you for that. Andrew, I had a question for you. Could you talk a little bit more about the community colleges? You mentioned it, but why they're so vital for an economic recovery, especially when we think that, for unemployed workers and those needing to be retrained. I know we have the experience from the 2008, 2009. Could you expand a little more on that?
Right. Thank you so much for the question, Jeff. Traditionally, community colleges have been there, especially during the economic downturns when people need to come back to us for retraining. With the unprecedented unemployment rates now, we really anticipate a lot more students. And like I mentioned, more than just the high school graduates coming to us for job retraining. Not only is it going to be job retraining, but it's sort of reimagining what does your career look like now? What are those emerging fields going to be? And we need to make significant investments into our community colleges so that we can be able to be ready for when they come and able to provide the necessary programs to get people into maybe even short-term job training opportunities and get them back into the workforce. It's vital for our economic recovery.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Shireen, I have a question for you. Could you talk more about why it's important that protections and exemptions for homeowners and renters, small businesses, and agriculture are so important to the parents in the community? Oh,
You're on mute.
There you go. Classic Zoom mistake, talking while you're still muted. Thank you, Jeff. You hear a lot from the opposition that this initiative is going to impact small businesses at a time when they are suffering from the results of the pandemic. But the important thing for everyone to know is that Prop 15 exempts small businesses with property values of less than $3 million. And not only that, provides business property tax exemption for small businesses and those with personal properties of up to $500,000. So those are all numbers to throw around, but the bottom line is that there are protection for small businesses. Those are not going to be the businesses that are impacted by this initiative. It is going to be wealthy corporations. And so the bulk of the money is going to be raised by from wealthy corporate property owners and not from small businesses, parents, and families. And that's why it matters to parents.
thank you. Thank you so much. I do have a question that came in about what's the support and momentum that has been generated behind this initiative as we see the effects of COVID-19 on the state's economy. And I'll go ahead and take that. If anybody wants to jump in, feel free. But we have been building this campaign, and the support behind this campaign has continued to build for Prop 15 because Californians know that it's needed more now than ever. This is a coalition of workers, it's a coalition of community partners, it's education, as well as those that are that support our cities and counties. Many Californians, especially right now, are seeing that big corporations are benefiting from this tax break, while our schools and our local governments are struggling. They're struggling, and especially in this environment, has just made it more emphatic about that struggle. So in the midst of this pandemic, we are seeing that. And even before the pandemic, we knew that we needed these resources to correct and close this corporate tax loophole so the corporations are paying their fair share. And this brings in $12 billion to our schools, 12 billion vital dollars to our schools and our local communities, which is exactly what we need at this period of time. So thank you for that question. Another question, anybody can answer that. Either raise your question. What are some of the places and communities? Education is here on this board. What are some of the places in the communities that this initiative would bring funds in, and how would it help our communities?
I'd like to touch on that, Jeff.
Go ahead.
Because I think this really matters to PTA members, because when you say schools and communities, what does communities mean? What are those kinds of programs and services that actually matter to families? And so I kind of put together a little list of some of the places that really matter. So public hospitals, health clinics, first responders, parks, librarians, public transportation, services to reduce homelessness. I mentioned before, mental health services, which are so crucial right now during this pandemic and the impact it's had on people. So that's just sort of my short list of things, because I don't want it to be a nebulous, what is local community are we supporting? We're supporting things that matter right in our local communities, those programs and services that our families and our kids participate in. So I think that's really important for all of us to know.
Can I say something? I want to echo what you just said. Our students are those people in those communities. And more and more, our students are relying on their community college to provide a lot of those services. So this would be, amazing if it passed, because then we can really build community together, and, the onus doesn't fall on one institution to try to solve all the problems. So thank you. It's great.
And Tony, is there anything you want to add? Having sat on a city council, having sat on a school board, having been a community organizer, the legislator, now the SPI, anything you want to add about how this supports schools and communities?
I think that Shanina and Audra really laid it out really well. I would only just say, having been a former city council member, I do know that cities really are hurting, and have been, for lost revenue for decades. And now, in this time where cities and counties are being asked to do more with less, this is an important resource to help our cities and our counties to do all those things that you heard. There was a great list that Shireen had that talked about, first responders and mental health services. A lot of that money comes from what can get generated locally, and this needs to be supplemented by Prop 15. So once again, just want to encourage everybody to vote for Prop 15. You will be supporting your schools and your communities and putting them first.
Thank you. I have one more question that was asked, and when do we expect schools and communities to see this additional revenue? And I can answer that, but I'm going to ask Tony to follow up on how important it is. But we will be seeing this revenue as soon as 2022, additional revenue to be coming in. We've heard from local leaders and school districts that guarantee of additional revenue coming in will be absolutely essential at that period of time. As we know, the state budget is flat funding from last year to this year, and it's in the coming years that we're really going to need that. But Tony, do you see how this can be beneficial at that period of time?
I think 2022 is really important. Having the revenue come available in 2022 becomes a bridge. That it bridges at a time when all of our financial experts are already predicting that it's our out years that are going to be even more difficult than our current year. And so 2022 is a very important time for this funding to come to fruition. To be honest, Jeff, I also think that for many people, it's a way of giving a sense of hope to people that we get this passed in November, and it sends a message that, yes, we're taking some really tough budget positions right now. School districts are struggling and our community colleges will be struggling, but seeing that there's some hope on the horizon, and that if we can hang in there till 2022, I think this would be a powerful message of hope for our pre-K through 12 systems, and for our community college systems, and for our local communities. So I'm again just hoping that everyone out there, yes, on Prop 15.
Thank you, Andrew. I don't know, as a community college board member, if there's anything to add about the expectation. I know colleges and school districts have to have